Good morning. On behalf of Mika and myself, a warm welcome to today's webinar about IT asset tracking. We are recording this webinar about tracking IT assets, and it will be made available on our website for your convenience or to share with your colleagues or customers. As always, a link to the recording will be sent to you via email later this week. In this interactive webinar, we do a deep dive to select the best type of RFID tags, getting the best performance for you for your IT asset applications. How to select the best RFID tags supported by real customer success cases. During this webinar, you have the option to raise some questions to Mika or to myself. They will be answered at the end of the webinar in our Q&A section in the last 5 to 10 minutes. If we are not able to come to your questions, then we will do that later to you, and we will make the questions also available on our website. We as Beontag see ourselves as someone who's enabling other companies to succeed. We build solutions in the area of graphics label materials as well as IoT worldwide, and with a very high focus on sustainability. We have, for example, our own fully plastic-free antenna technology that we presented in our previous webinar about eco-tags for industries. Beontag might still be new to someone, but we actually have history all the way back to the 80s, when we started with graphics and labels materials. When it comes to RFID, the company has grown massively over the past few years, and also acquired some significant players in this field. And don't worry, I'm not going to give you a history lesson here, but just wanted to highlight the long track record and growth of the company from Brazilian into a fully global player in the market. With operations in more than 20 countries and 5 dedicated IoT manufacturing locations in Brazil, Finland, Italy, and China, and by the end of this year, or next year, I have to say now, also in the USA. It supports RFID manufacturing as close as possible to our customers to keep supply chains as short as possible and mitigate on any supply chain risks. DTE, or Digital Transformation Enabler, is divided in 5 global focused segments. Mass market supporting retail and apparel applications with PET and eco-tags. Smart cities supplying contactless paper tickets to public transport companies. Smart industries designing and manufacturing industrial grade RFID tags and labels. The exclusivity segment is working with major high-end fashion brands on end-to-end digital product passport application. And payment services service our banking customers with credit card inlays. Beontag short-range wireless products are based on 3 technologies. UHF, or RAIN RFID technology, for fast reading of large number of items with read ranges up to 20 meters. NFC, near field communication, or HF technology, to support data sharing between an asset and a mobile phone application. And Bluetooth Low Energy Beacons, or BLE, for accurate real-time location services. Beontag is offering a broad range of industrial hard tags and labels. If you're looking for the most durable tag for harsh environments, then our RFID family is the one to go for. For the applications where you don't have this harsh environments to tag assets, the Steelware family is your choice. And of course, our Silverline family is our industrial grade on-metal label with high-end adhesive. The Heatwave family is the reliable tag, supporting temperatures up to 250 degrees Celsius. And for applications using plastic returnable items like totes and containers, the Carrier family is your choice, supporting industrial high-pressure cleaning. The Cruiser family is our offering for electronic vehicle identification applications like toll roads and express roads. Our Go family is designed for applications where you don't need that industrial robustness, but still a cost-efficient and engineered solution. And to support real-time location services, our Viking BLE Bluetooth Low Energy product range is used with many RTLS platforms already. And in the case you don't find a suitable standard Confidex product out of these families, our Design Studio is our service for customized tags. I hand over now to Mika, who will educate us in more detail about RFID in IT asset management applications and some real global IT use cases.
Thank you, Paul, for the nice introduction, and good to see such a good audience joining us again today, and welcome to this live webinar also on my behalf. I would like to start the presentation with a bit generic use cases, so we all know what we actually mean when we talk about IT asset tracking. And when we talk about IT asset tracking in the context of RFID, these are the three main use cases that we see. First, we have data centers, definitely a big part of IT asset use cases for RFID. Tags are used, for example, for service and maintenance records of servers and other data center hardware. Audits are a big reason to RFID enable the equipment. Being able to securely and efficiently run the audit is something that our customers are often looking for. Reading the whole server rack at once is just quite much more efficient than doing that with barcode one by one or even manually, like some customers still are doing. Security is of course important when we talk about IT assets. This webinar, for example, is currently recorded on a server that I have no idea where it is located at, and so is my LinkedIn profile, all the other personal information. And because of that, all those data centers, they are highly secure locations. And the RFID tagging the assets, it will improve the security. There's as you can quickly identify individual assets and their locations also. Second, we have office items. Some similarities with the data centers, but of course, expanding the type of tagged assets quite a bit. Inventory is again very common use case here. What do I have? Where is it located? RFID is also speeding up the check-in and check-out processes, quite often related to a situation where you need to check, for example, a lab equipment or tooling for yourself, something that you don't always carry with you. With RFID, that process can be highly automated. Audits, again, one of the driving use case here to ensure your books are correct and inventory data is accurate. Loss prevention is also something we see some of our customers using RFID for, reading all the IT assets when they leave the premises and follow their moves within the site. I also wanted to highlight slightly different type of use case, but something we start to see more and more, IT asset manufacturers. There are a lot of IT assets that already today have RFID embedded into the asset, ready for the end customer to use. And these same RFID tags can be used also by the manufacturers for their own production control and improved visibility of the whole supply chain. At this point, I would like to hand over briefly back to Paul for our first poll of the day.
Yes, thank you, Mika, for already giving a little bit of an overview on this part. You should see now the poll that we have popping up in the window. You can pick one or you can pick several of the options. We have here the three use cases previously already discussed by Mika, but we also raise some other ones like healthcare and lab equipment, as well as wiring and cables as separate applications, as those are also common ones in IT asset tracking. So we will give you a few seconds to fill in this poll. before we go to the results of the poll. As you can see, office equipment, healthcare lab equipments are the two big ones, which is quite interesting that it is not only those two parts, but also the data centers and IT asset manufacturing type of applications. In the next slides, Mika will go in a little bit more into detail about data center equipment, office equipment, healthcare lab equipment. So I think this is a good start to hand over back to you, Mika.
Thank you, Paul. For sure, yes, we have good content for all those applications here coming up. And next, we will take a look on what do you need to understand about the IT asset itself before heading into tag selection process. If you have joined some of our previous webinars, you have seen that we quite often emphasize and talk about the effect of materials. This same topic is very important also with IT assets, as there are a lot of different materials used in those. I have a Lenovo with plastic case here, and you might have a metallic Apple, and those actually they behave in a different way from RFID point of view. The performance of the tag is highly affected by the material tag is attached on. If you're tagging a metallic asset, you will need a different tag than tagging a plastic one. There are also RFID tags that will work on any surface, and those are good options if you're not tagging, let's say, millions of assets. In that case, it would be more cost efficient to use a different type of RFID tag for different type of items. With IT assets, the big challenge, I would say, is that they require quite often, let's say they quite often have some metallic inside, even though looking plastic outside, like my Lenovo here. They may have a metallic frame or PCB boards right behind the plastic casing, and therefore you actually would need a on-metal tag for those assets. And in addition to laptops, there are a lot of other IT assets that you might need an on-metal tag for. Data center items have pretty much always a metallic structure. Also ejector arms that are sometimes equipped with RFID. They look plastic, but quite often they come with the metals inside for improved robustness. Wiring and cabling, they have metals inside that needs to be considered. With bigger IT office equipment, I would say it's generally possible to find a location for standard non-metal RFID tag, but this needs to be taken into consideration when selecting the location of the tag. Handheld mobile computers, they are generally filled with electronics without too much empty space inside, and therefore often need an on-metal tag or a tag that is specifically designed for a certain device and takes the structure of the device into account. Also, the PCB boards and other electronics like hard drives and so on, they contain metals and they do need a specific tag to handle that. Generally with IT assets, both office equipment but also data center items, the trend is to make them smaller, to take as little space as possible. And this is, of course, adding some challenges for us as we would need to design tags that are small enough to fit the available space, but still have good enough read range. And we all know that read range and size of the tag, they kind of go pretty much hand in hand. Bigger the tag, better the read range. This challenge in the tag placement is also good to take into account when planning IT asset tracking. Next, I would like to take a bit deeper dive into the tag selection process and success stories. We already touched the challenges with different materials and tag location, but what else do you need to take into account when selecting a tag for your project? First, and I would say definitely the most important step of tag selection is to define your needs. There are different attributes you need to consider, like footprint, visual marking, read range, how will you attach tag on your asset, and so on. Selecting a tag is always a bit of a trade-off between these features. You have to balance between them. You also don't want to over-engineer a tag solution, but still want to spec in a good enough tag that will for sure survive the intended lifetime and meet all the criteria for a successful implementation. You need to weigh these attributes in a way that if size is critical, you have to compromise performance and possibly adhesion. A smaller tag, it just has less adhesive on it. And then all these are, of course, affecting the total cost of the tag. And at this point, I will again hand over to Paul, and let's take a look on our second poll of the webinar.
Well, thank you, Mika. So the second poll is basically on the key design targets, as you mentioned. So what are the biggest challenges you have faced currently or in the past few months when you are tackling these IT assets? You can pick one, you can pick more on this part, like the adhesion or the RF performance, size of tags, all the parts which might be more or less important in your considerations when you are starting to do an IT asset tagging project. So we give it a few more seconds to give the audience the time to fill in the poll. Let's see the results of the poll of the audience. So you see by 60% is the RF performance. The biggest design target and the biggest design challenges that we see in this IT asset tracking applications. Also, the cost of the tag is quite challenging. I think the performance and the cost of the tag are always two parts which are going hand in hand. A good performance and a cost-efficient solution of the tag. In our next slides, Mika, you will go in a little bit more detail in performance, cost of tag, size of tags. So I think this gives a good overview and a good starting point for the next part of the webinar.
Indeed, we will certainly cover some topics that can help you to improve that read range. It's not always just about the product, but also the application and setup of the project. So let's take a look on those. But before that, I would like to bring in one of the technology comparisons we often face. Should I go with HF NFC or should I go with the UHF RAIN RFID solution? There are some big differences between these, of course. First, the memory. If you need to store a lot of data on your asset, then HF, it does offer more options. There are options with UHF also, but HF is more flexible when it comes to higher memories. You should note that with HF, we talk about bytes here, not bits like with UHF. Another big difference is obviously read range. Does your application require centimeters or meters of read range? In addition to longer read range, the UHF with UHF, you can also read hundreds of tags in a second, while NFC is more one-by-one reading. So if you want to quickly inventory your data center, then clear decision would be to go with UHF. But if you are tagging only office items and need to have access to that data every now and then, one by one, then NFC might actually be a better solution for that. Another very important point is the reader infrastructure. NFC reader is in everybody's pocket, meaning a mobile phone, while UHF requires a specific reader infrastructure. We also have some price difference there, but that is actually not that significant, I would say, anymore. I marked here that NFC is slightly more expensive, but this is valid mainly if we talk about cheaper single-use labels. With those, UHF is still clearly cheaper. But when we go to on-metal labels, hard tags, With those, the difference is not so significant anymore. Once you have defined the key requirements for the project and defined the technology to be used, you can start thinking if it's a hard tag or a label format that actually fits better your needs. There are pros and cons between these. If you gave a higher weight for the mechanical durability out of the features, then hard tag, of course, is definitely the way to go. Downside is more manual encoding processes. You cannot run them through printers like you can labels. If you gave higher weight for the easiness of printing and encoding or thin structure as most important feature, then label form factor would be a better choice. But you would be compromising the durability and let's say the flexibility with different kind of attachment methods that hard tags offer. With ID assets, we see a lot of both of these in use actually. So there is no format that is better than the other. One benefit of hard tag is also that we can get a bit better performance due to the thicker structure compared to label with similar footprint. Thickness helps to gain the read range, but it's not always preferred due to the appearance of the tag, especially with IT assets. And talking about the appearance, with IT assets, the visual look of the tag is, I would say, a lot more important than in more rough industrial environment. If you want to, you do want the tag to look as fully integrated into the asset as possible, since they are highly visible to end customers. Another important point to focus is the attachment. Tags needs to be easy to apply. For that, there are tags with different attachment methods. We have backside adhesives, we have holes for the zip ties, cable ties, labels with loops for the attachment, or even mechanical attachment like screws, which of course it's a bit more rare with IT assets, but still an option. You also want to ensure that you apply the tag at the right time, either at the manufacturer of the IT asset or at the end customer. And this tagging process is something I would like to highlight also a bit more. Today we see more and more what we call source tagging. This means that we design the RFID tag to fit the IT asset already at the point of manufacturing. This quite often means that the tag is embedded inside the structure of the IT asset and not necessarily visible even. Another option is to apply tag. To apply the tag is what we call aftermarket tagging, meaning that you already have the IT asset and you are retrofitting the tag on them. This usually happens in the ID centers or distribution points, even out in the field. The challenge here is that the uniform placement of the tags can cause problems. In large-scale projects involving different sites, they are not always attached where they should be, and we already learned that the location of the tag does have an impact on the performance because of the materials. Third option is something we also see quite often nowadays, where we are source tagging the new equipment at the manufacturer, but self-applying RFID tags on the existing items or the items that you cannot get with RFID tag on them. This is important to define when you start planning an IT asset tracking project. Few words about personalization. If you want to have the tags printed and encoded instead of printing them yourself, this is something that we also do quite a lot for our customers. You can encode them with your own encoding scheme or with using some of the standardized encoding schemes such as GS1, for example. With IT assets, we very often print customer branding on the tags or have them with the color that better fits their equipment. Delivered format is also something we can customize if you want to have, for example, a pair of tags to be encoded and delivered together. For some customers, we are delivering a matching non-RFID label together with the tag that is used for the documentation purpose of the IT assets. We have also some more industrial options listed here, such as visual marking using laser engraving or welding bracket for the attachment, but those are of course quite rare with IT assets. Radiation pattern is something that is very important to understand for a successful implementation. The radiation of on-metal tag is generally not symmetric, and it also varies between different shape of assets. And because of this, this is something that we recommend also to test in real environment to find the best orientation of the tag. In this example on the right, you can see that when one of our tags is read from 45-degree angle, you can get either 90% of the maximum or 50% of the maximum read range. And this kind of difference, it can already make a big impact on how reliable your setup design is. Now, on the other hand, if I rotate the tag 90 degrees on this graph, we actually get a consistent 80% read range in both directions. So if you want to, for example, place one tag on a tall server rack, top or bottom, you might actually want to optimize the read range with the first option. Or if you need to make sure you have as wide and as consistent read range as possible, then you might want to use this second way of attaching a tag, second orientation. For example, if every item on that server rack is tagged, then this orientation would give you much more consistent read range and would most probably make it faster to read all the items on the rack. Next, we will take a brief look on our offering. These were the product families that Paul already introduced at the very beginning. But when it comes to IT asset tracking, we will focus on these 4 families and also our Design Studio service, Steelwave, Silverline, Carrier, and Go product families. Let's start with Steelwave. All these product families, they have several products in them, but I only will highlight a few of them. For this one, I have 2 products here. Steelwave Micro 2 is one of our most common tags for IT assets. We already learned that there's generally a rather small footprint available for a tag, and our customers, they have found Steelwave Micro 2 having a good match between performance and footprint. Steelwave HF, this is an NFC compliant on-metal label that can also be printed with Sato HF printer. Good option if you decide to use HF technology for your IT assets. For example, I have always one attached on my laptop here so that you can tap it with your mobile phone and easily get my contacts from there. Then we have Silverline family. Here we have 4 products with different dimensions. These are also very common for IT asset tracking, as they can be used basically on all IT assets, no matter what is it made of. But they also have very thin structure, only a bit more than 1 millimeter in thickness. If you're tagging laptops, nobody really wants to have a hard tag with 0.5 centimeter thickness attached on their laptops. Silverlines are the only on-metal labels that are Zebra RFID printers are supporting, so you have a full support from Zebra. Water-resistant IP68 structure is not really needed with IT assets, hopefully, but the durable adhesive and printing is something that is required, especially with laptops that are quite often put into a bag and taken out, and they get a lot of friction over the years. Next, we have Carrier family. Even though being designed for plastic containers, they also fit actually very well on non-metallic IT assets. With office equipment, it's also important that you have a strong adhesive for all the different surfaces that you may have. With carrier labels, we use what we call industrial grade adhesive that has good adhesion basically on any material. Carrier Classic is a good option for UHF RFID with up to 18 meter of read range on plastic, while Carrier HF is a similar structure but with the HF NFC technology. Our Go family is designed for more cost-sensitive applications, but offers some good options also for IT asset tracking. Loop Tag is designed for hard-to-tag items like wire harnesses, IT cables, tubes, anything where you cannot that you cannot attach adhesive tag on it. It can be also printed and encoded with standard RFID printers. Then we have two on-metal labels here, Fairwave Classic and Fairwave Micro. These are our on-metal label options for applications where silver line type of industrial grade materials are or read range is not required, but still good options to consider for the indoor office items. If you don't find a suitable product from our standard offering, we do have our Design Studio service, like Paul mentioned. Design Studio customization can be just a color change of existing tag. That is something that we do quite a lot. Or it can be something totally new from the scratch to meet the certain requirements that you may have for example, on dimensions, appearance, attachment methods, or even being suitable for your molding process. Here we see some tags that are meant to be embedded into IT assets, overmolded, as we say, and also some tags designed to be retrofitted on IT assets, something we have designed for specifically for our customers. This Design Studio is something that we do actually quite much, and we have plenty of projects ongoing all the time. And because of this, we also have a detailed process that we always follow. This is obviously a bit simplified version of that. First step, a very critical step, is a learn phase. If you don't get the requirements right from the beginning, you might end up to a wrong product, and that can be a very costly exercise. Correct requirements are essential for first-time right delivery. Then we have design phase with outcome of prototypes for quick testing. Ramp-up phase, meaning pilot with a production quality tags. And then scaling up from there. Next, I have several success stories that I would like to introduce to you. And these first few, they are good examples of the Design Studio service. Now, this one here is a Fortune 500 manufacturer of IT assets, and they had a need for RFID label specifically designed for the bezel of their data center equipment. We are also coming back to this tag selection considerations graph that we already discussed earlier. And this customer, they had a requirement to have the label with a specific outlook and face finish to match the surface material of their servers, and also wanted to have good performance because the servers, they are often stacked in a rack, so you have to make sure that performance is there. Next, we have another source tagging use case. This customer had a need for embedded RFID tag. When overmolding tag, the robustness of the product is very important. The molding process is generally using a very high temperatures and also high pressure. So standard RFID tag, it would just actually not survive that process. In addition to the robustness, this customer also wanted to have the product with a certain footprint to fit even the smallest of the items that they wanted to tag. Another example where the tag was specifically designed to be part of the product from the very beginning, from the design of the item itself. This is another design studio example where we designed the RFID tag specifically for this one customer. The product is quite unique with this kind of a hinge structure that helps the customer to have visual information also under the tag. A good example how limited the space available to retrofit a tag on an IT asset can be. Here we had only 15 times 15 millimeter space for the tag. This customer is offering their servers with RFID enabled by attaching this tag on them. If you buy the server and click that I want it to have it RFID, then it comes with this tag attached on it already. This is a good example of product that might sound simple at first, but is actually quite challenging when we go down to all the individual requirements. We worked with one of German automotive OEMs, and we developed for them what we call ESD on metal label that is optimized to work on the ESD protective material. All the PCB boards and electronics, they are sensitive for this electrostatic discharge, and therefore these ESD boxes are very common in the production of IT assets. They are used for the logistics of electronics. This customer had plenty of requirements. As you can see, we have actually picked all of them. For example, high read range on challenging material. This ESD material is a challenge for RFID. Good adhesion and robustness for industrial environment, and specific dimensions and visual layout also based on the standard that they use in this automotive industry. This product is also compliant with all major RFID printer suppliers and can be supplied with additional protective film on top of the printing for increased robustness. US Social Security Administration, SSA, is using our Steelware Micro 2 for their ID asset management. The different attachment methods of hanging, adhesive, and hose for the cable tie, combined with the performance, that was something that made this product a perfect fit for their project. And using RFID to make the inventory of their IT asset, it resulted up to 90% reduction in the amount of labor needed for the traditional counting of the assets. Additionally, RFID system, it improves the data center security like discussed when the removed and returned assets are tracked automatically when passing the RFID gate at the door. Also something to mention here is that we have the same Steelware Micro 2 product with NFC technology, and we have customers tagging cables with that product, for example. Here we again come to a question of UHF or NFC being the best fit for your project. Denso is one of our reader partners, but also our customer for IT asset tracking. They are using a Silverline blade together with their SP1 scanner globally to identify all kind of IT assets and office electronics. Denso is a company that developed a QR code 1994, but as RFID offers speed and flexibility over the barcode, they also are moving into RFID to track their own IT assets. I like this use case as we have some real numerical results here. The time that it took to perform the audit was reduced from 64 to 6 hours. Quite good numbers to base the ROI calculations on. And with my voice breaking up, those were the slides for our tag selection process and success stories.
Well, I will save you here, Mika.
Thank you.
after quite a comprehensive and quite detailed package of information shared to the audience. So I think you need to have a bit of a sip of water now to smear your throat again. But once again, thank you for this really comprehensive package of information. Now, from our solution package point of view, we can think of on our Silverline and on metal family of products, of course, where we have the partnership with Zebra and our Silverline labels, which are broadly used in the IT environment. So our Silverline on metal family of products, in combination with the Zebra on metal printer solution, which was specifically designed and engineered for Silverline labels, all in all to ensure an excellent printing quality and encoding accuracy for the particular thickness of this label family of Silverlines. And with that, it also comes with support from Zebra when you are using the Silverline labels. We're not only working with Zebra, we also have other label printer companies that work with our labels and have selected our labels or qualified our labels in NFC and in HF technology with the Sato printers, which can be done with labels that are on metal and off metal, HF, NFC, and of course with the other major brands like Toshiba Tech, Sato, and TSC Printronics for UHF, RAIN, RFID type of labels and products. This will bring us also to our Q&A section of this webinar. I would like to remind you that you can raise questions in this section of the Q&A in the Zoom tool. We will try to answer all the questions which are raised in during this webinar. We already have a few in the Q&A session. So let's start working on those for a few minutes. Let's start with the first question, and that's related to a tamper evident, Mika. And the question is basically, do we have? It is not mentioned in the webinar, but do we have tamper evident or tamper proof RFID tags available?
Good question. We indeed didn't cover that. We do have. And through our design studio service, we have made both on metal and also off metal products with the tamper evident feature. So I would suggest to reach out to us after the webinar.
So it's a challenging time now for you, Mika. One other question out of the audience is if you have a plan for having a webinar with our BLE products from Christian. Let me answer that question a little bit, Mika, to save your voice. Well, we are planning for next year, 2024, to have a various amount of webinars again. And one of those will definitely be with our BLE products. So our Viking product line, we are currently working with 1 or 2 partners globally to build up an updated BLE webinar for industrial applications. So I hope that will answer the question. The other question from Shailesh related to BLE is about BLE gateways. Do we have that in our portfolio? As you have seen in the webinar, we do have BLE tags and labels or tags available in our portfolio. We don't have a BLE gateway currently in our portfolio. However, we work pretty close with a couple of vendors that have pretty good BLE gateways for industrial environments, like Option in Belgium, Trion in Finland, SolidSense in Europe as well, with WirePass and normal BLE firmware supporting. But BLE is a standard solution, so it is standardized with that one. So in essence, any BLE gateway would work with our BLE tags. So Shailesh, I hope that answers your question as well. Then another question, and I hope, Mika, that you are ready for answering this one, In your webinar slides, you have shown some pre-printed colored labels. Is that something that we have in our portfolio as a standard? Is there an MOQ or any other concerns in that sense?
Well, let's see if my voice can hold up now. We do that quite a lot. We print, for example, customer logos, or we print the labels to match the item color or something like that. We haven't defined a specific MOQ for that. I would recommend to reach out to your sales representative. It also relates to the product that we would print. So the MOQ can be different for different type of products. So let's check this after the webinar.
All right, thank you. One other questions out of the audience is about tagging inside the laptop. So the question from Juan Carlos is basically, do you have any tag that could be inside of a laptop, attached at the inside of the laptop with a good reach range, at least 3 to 5 meters, in the reach range available in your portfolio?
Good question. I would say that if we talk about a laptop, yes, we can find a location inside. But when we talk about corporate IT systems, they have a lot of different type of laptops, and it's not always the same location for inside every single model that you can put the RFID in. So there is a bit of a challenge to find good location. And as said earlier, if you have a Apple laptop, they tend to be metallic, so RFID signals are blocked by metals. So that's even more challenging to find a location inside a metallic encasing of that some laptops have. So doable, but with some challenges and depending on the laptop models that you have.
Well, thank you very much. We still have a bit of time, so let's go to the next question, and that is about the speed of writing. Do you have recommendations for readers to optimize the write time of text?
Let's say that we are neutral on the reader selection, so we don't recommend a certain brand or reader models. We can talk about this after the webinar, but and also would be good to understand that what kind of limitations there could be for the writing. We still talk about milliseconds, so it's not a long time that it takes to encode RFID tag, but probably a topic to be discussed in a bit more details after the webinar.
All right. Then one other question related to writing or read range, and that is the question: can I re-encode the Silverline tags?
You certainly can. If you still have them on reel, you can of course encode them with the zipper printer. If you already have them in use, you can re-encode them with any RFID printer, any RFID reader, as long as they are not locked. So with RFID, you can always permanently lock, or you can lock with the password memory. So of course, in that case, if it's permanently locked, you cannot re-encode. And this is a feature that we recommend some of our customers to use, because if you have an ID of a laptop, that ID is probably not going to change over the time of that laptop. So it might be even good to block re-encoding. But if you haven't locked, then yes, you can always re-encode any RFID tag, also Silverlines.
All right. Well, let's stay a little bit on the Silverline family products. There's another question from Nicholas. They are using the Silverline Slim labels, and the spec has changed last year to the Monza R6P. So his question is, what are the differences between that Monza R6P and the M4i coding?
In the process of encoding, there is no differences. The difference is in the memory amount, and you can see from the product data sheets how the memories go. R6P, it has a bit less memory than Monza 4i. If you need the memory, we just released a new Silverline Blade version with Zebra, utilizing the M780, so higher EPC memory variant of the M700 product family. So there is now again a high memory variant also available for Silverlines, but that's only for the Blade.
All right. There's one other question still from Manuel about this UHF tamper-proof tags, if we have it. I think you mentioned it earlier, but basically the answer is yes, we have some tamper-proof UHF tags available. They are not part of our standard portfolio, but basically what we need to do is get in contact, get the specs and the specifications, and get in contact with our sales representative in the region that you are, to follow up with you on that specific tamper-proof tag, which we have available in on metal tags, but also off metal tags. I think we are more or less at the end of this webinar and the Q&A session. I have one last question. That is, what factors affect the read range?
That is actually a quite good question. There's a lot of factors that affect the read range, starting from the reader that you use, reader settings, reader antenna, even the cabling of the reader. Then we go to the asset that you're tracking. We already talked about the surface that it affects. Also the location where you put tag on that asset, it has an impact. So there's a lot of variables that actually affect the read range. And because of this, we actually measure our datasheet read range that we have specified in a datasheet. It's measured in an anechoic chamber to eliminate all these factors. So you can actually compare the results between products and with different time of testing. So there's a lot of factors that affect the read range. It's pretty normal that read range in real application is something else that we have in a datasheet. It can be more or it can be less depending on all those factors.
I think we have time for one last question from Manuel. Do you have some labels with a special antenna design that can reduce the shadowing effects when they are together, one over another, to be used with papers or documents?
Good question. We did not cover the Eco product family, which is our paper-based sustainable product family. In that, we actually do have products that are specifically designed to be stacked. So that can be clothes in a retail shop, but it can also be documents when it comes to IT documents. So I would recommend that let's be in touch after the webinar and we can take a look if those products would fit your use case.
All right. Well, thank you, Mika, for a really comprehensive and detailed webinar about IT asset tagging. And I would like to thank the audience as well to take your time this morning to spend about 60 minutes learning and experience the deep dive of IT asset tracking. As mentioned, there will be more webinars in the near future next year. So please keep in touch with us, and I wish you a very, very nice rest of the day.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.